Mark and Sarah Johnson thought it would be a perfect summer day. But when Adrian Wells arrived at their family barbecue, secrets, obsession, and betrayal turned laughter into screams, and one moment of desire became a deadly act of murder. Please subscribe for daily new update of Crime Story, and watch till end. The Johnson family had been looking forward to this day for weeks. It was the middle of summer in Manchester, and the sun shone brightly over their quiet suburban street. Their garden was perfectly prepared for a barbecue, with a long wooden table adorned with plates, cutlery, and colorful napkins. Fresh flowers in small vases added a cheerful touch, while fairy lights hung from the trees, waiting to twinkle as evening approached. The smell of freshly cut grass mixed with the faint aroma of burgers and sausages sizzling on the grill. Everything seemed idyllic, almost like a scene from a postcard. Friends and relatives began arriving in the late afternoon, greeting each other with smiles and laughter. Children ran barefoot across the lawn, chasing each other with squeals of delight. Adults gathered around the table, glasses of wine in hand, catching up on work, holidays, and family gossip. Mark Johnson, the head of the family, moved among them effortlessly, checking that everyone had something to eat or drink, his laughter joining the chorus of voices. He was the kind of man who seemed genuinely happy, proud of the home he had built and the family he cherished. Sarah, Mark's wife, appeared equally content. She wore a summer dress that fluttered gently in the breeze and moved gracefully among the guests, offering plates of food and small smiles. But despite the cheerful atmosphere, there was a subtle tension in her movements. She often glanced over her shoulder, eyes scanning the garden as if expecting someone. She smiled when talking to friends, yet there was a flicker of worry behind her eyes, a hint that something was not quite right. In the background, the sound of a lawn sprinkler mingled with birdsong and the occasional bark of a neighbor's dog. The garden felt safe and welcoming, yet there was a strange contrast between the bright, sunny day and the unease lingering just beneath the surface. No one could see it, not the children laughing in the corner, not the elderly neighbors sipping lemonade, and certainly not Mark, who was completely absorbed in making sure everyone was comfortable. As the afternoon progressed, the barbecue fire crackled and sent plumes of smoke rising toward the clear sky. Plates were piled high with food, and drinks were passed around. Conversations overlapped, stories of past vacations and family milestones creating a lively hum. It seemed like the perfect summer day, a memory in the making, yet the undercurrent of hidden secrets flowed quietly beneath every smile and laugh. Sarah's gaze kept drifting toward the gate, anticipation and anxiety mixed together, a silent warning that the day was about to change forever. No one noticed the small signs of tension, the subtle shifts in body language that would later become critical pieces of a dark puzzle. Everything looked ordinary, bright and cheerful, but fate had already started weaving its threads, setting the stage for a tragedy that would shatter the illusion of peace in the Johnson family's perfect summer day. The sun continued to shine, children continued to play, and laughter continued to echo, completely unaware that the harmony of the afternoon was fragile, like glass waiting to break. The warm afternoon air was filled with chatter and the scent of grilled food, but the peaceful atmosphere was about to be disrupted. The gate at the far end of the Johnson garden opened slowly, and a man stepped onto the lawn. His name was Adrian Wells. He was tall, well-dressed, and moved with a confidence that immediately drew attention. At first it seemed as though he was just another guest, someone who had been invited casually, yet the way he scanned the garden hinted at a purpose far deeper than mere friendliness. His eyes lingered on Sarah longer than what was polite, a subtle intensity in his gaze that went unnoticed by everyone but her. Sarah felt her pulse quicken the moment she saw him. She had been expecting him, though she pretended otherwise, hiding her nervousness behind a polite smile and a casual wave. Adrian approached slowly, his steps measured, almost as if he was surveying his surroundings for potential obstacles. There was a magnetic pull in the way he moved, the kind that made people notice him without realizing why. To the casual observer, he appeared charming and polite, greeting a few guests with handshakes and brief nods. But Sarah knew the truth. He had come with a hidden agenda, one that involved her and, unknowingly, her husband. Mark, busy attending to the barbecue, did not notice Adrian's presence at first. He was preoccupied with flipping burgers and offering drinks, smiling at the laughter of children running through the garden. To him, Adrian seemed harmless, another friendly face among the familiar ones, but Sarah felt a knot tighten in her stomach. She moved around the table, keeping Adrian within her peripheral vision, unable to stop glancing at him. The way he looked at her, the subtle smirk that occasionally crossed his lips, sent shivers down her spine. There was something unsettling about his calm demeanor, a quiet confidence that felt more dangerous than polite. As the guests mingled, Adrian found moments to linger near Sarah. He offered compliments and gestures that seemed harmless, yet carried an intensity that made the air between them feel charged. Sarah responded cautiously, aware of the line they were crossing, yet unable to completely hide her attraction. There was a thrill in the secrecy, a forbidden excitement that she tried to suppress while pretending to enjoy the barbecue for everyone else's sake. No one else seemed to notice the tension building quietly. The children played with carefree energy, and the adults remained engrossed in casual conversations. The sun shone bright overhead, casting long shadows across the garden, oblivious to the storm brewing underneath. Adrian's presence changed everything, though it seemed almost imperceptible at first. His arrival had injected a quiet unease into the day, a subtle disturbance that hinted at the chaos to come. As the afternoon continued, the laughter and chatter of the barbecue hid the growing tension between Sarah and Adrian. Every glance, every small movement carried a hidden meaning, a silent communication that no one else could interpret. The seemingly perfect summer day had begun to shift, the shadow of danger creeping slowly across the sunlit lawn. And although no one could see it yet, the arrival of Adrian Wells had set into motion events that would change the Johnson family forever. As the barbecue continued, the cheerful atmosphere started to feel strangely tense to Sarah. She moved among the guests, passing plates and refilling drinks, but her mind was elsewhere. Adrian had found a way to stay near her without drawing attention, standing just close enough for her to feel the heat of his presence. Every time their eyes met, a silent understanding passed between them, a connection that seemed to defy the laughter and music around them. It was thrilling, terrifying, and intoxicating all at once. Mark remained oblivious. He was busy engaging with guests, laughing and joking as though nothing could disturb the perfect day he had planned. He adjusted the barbecue tongs with a casual confidence, flipping burgers and sausages with practiced ease, completely unaware that the person Sarah had been secretly involved with was now in his garden, lurking near his wife. To him, Adrian was just a polite stranger, someone to nod to and offer a drink. But Sarah's nerves were taut with the knowledge that this man carried more than charm. He carried a dangerous obsession. The children ran around, kicking a football between them, their laughter echoing across the garden. Neighbors passing by on the street would have seen nothing unusual, a normal summer gathering under the sun, but beneath the surface, the atmosphere had begun to shift. Sarah could feel it in the tension coiling in her chest, in the way her pulse quickened when Adrian brushed past her, too casual to draw attention. Each touch, each lingering glance, was a spark that could ignite into something uncontrollable. Adrian, meanwhile, seemed perfectly calm. His confidence never wavered, and his smile remained steady. It was the kind of smile that concealed intentions far darker than any guest could imagine. He moved through the garden with ease, talking politely to others, subtly positioning himself near Sarah whenever possible. Every small gesture, the brush of a hand against hers while taking a plate, the tilt of his head as he listened to her laugh, was carefully calculated. Sarah tried to remain composed, but inside her emotions were a storm, a mixture of excitement, guilt and fear. No one else noticed the silent tension growing between them. Conversations flowed easily, the clinking of glasses and bursts of laughter masking the dangerous energy simmering near the table. The sun began its slow descent, casting long golden shadows across the lawn. The warm light made the garden look even more idyllic, a stark contrast to the invisible threat growing within it. For Sarah, every moment with Adrian was a risk, every interaction a delicate balance between desire and danger. She knew that what was happening could destroy her life, yet she could not stop herself from being drawn to him. The secret affair, hidden for weeks, had reached a critical point. Their eyes met again, and for a moment, the world around them seemed to disappear, leaving only the two of them and the tension that crackled like electricity in the air. The barbecue, filled with laughter, and the smell of grilled food, continued as if nothing were wrong. But Sarah knew that beneath the sunshine and cheerful smiles, a storm was building, one that would soon shatter the fragile peace and change everyone's lives forever. The connection she shared with Adrian was no longer a secret confined to fleeting moments. It had become a dangerous force, capable of pulling them all into a tragedy that none could escape. The afternoon was slowly fading into evening, and the garden seemed to glow under the warm light of the setting sun. The barbecue fire crackled, sending tiny sparks into the air, while the smell of grilled meat and smoky wood mingled with the sweet scent of flowers. Children continued to run and play, chasing each other with carefree abandon, their laughter filling the space with a false sense of safety. The adults talked and laughed, sipping wine and sharing stories, unaware that the tension between Sarah, Adrian, and Mark was about to erupt in a way no one could predict. Sarah tried to maintain her composure, but the way Adrian lingered near her made her heart race. He moved as though he owned the garden, confident and deliberate, carefully positioning himself close enough to be noticed by her, but not by anyone else. Every small interaction between them was loaded with meaning, every glance a spark that could ignite a fire. Sarah knew that she was walking a dangerous line, yet she could not resist the pull of the forbidden excitement that Adrian brought with him. Mark, still oblivious, was focused on entertaining the guests. He moved among them with a practiced ease, offering drinks and checking plates, laughing as if nothing could disturb the perfect day he had planned. But Adrian's presence was an invisible threat, a shadow moving quietly in the garden. Every time Mark passed near Adrian, a faint tension seemed to ripple through the air, though neither man acknowledged it. The tension, small and unnoticed at first, was growing, like a storm cloud slowly gathering over the bright summer sky. As the sun dipped lower, a small disagreement began to form, though at first it seemed trivial. Adrian made a comment about the way the food was prepared, just loud enough for Mark to hear. Mark responded with a laugh, brushing it off as a minor joke. But Adrian's expression darkened, and the atmosphere shifted. Guests sensed nothing at first, continuing to chat and eat, but the subtle shift in body language between the two men was unmistakable. The calm of the garden was fragile, a thin veneer over the storm that was quietly building. The argument escalated quickly, though no one could understand why. Words were exchanged, sharp and pointed, cutting through the cheerful noise like a knife. Guests glanced nervously at the two men, sensing that something serious was unfolding, but before anyone could intervene, the tension became physical. Adrian stepped closer, his body tense and deliberate, and Mark responded defensively, trying to maintain control. The garden that had felt safe and inviting just moments before was suddenly charged with fear and anticipation. Sarah stood frozen, torn between panic and fascination. She realized, with a sick feeling in her stomach, that the confrontation would not remain a minor quarrel. Every detail of the situation, the hidden affair, the obsession in Adrian's eyes, Mark's unaware confidence, was now converging toward a breaking point. The bright sunny barbecue that had promised joy and laughter had turned into a powder keg, and no one present could predict the explosion that was about to come. The golden light of the setting sun fell across the garden, illuminating the faces of friends and family who were oblivious to the danger in their midst. Yet beneath the surface, the storm had already begun. The argument, seemingly small and insignificant, was only the beginning of a chain of events that would turn a perfect summer day into a night. The garden, once filled with laughter and music, fell into an uneasy silence. The argument between Adrian and Mark had escalated beyond words. Their faces were tense, their movements sharp and deliberate, and every guest who looked their way felt a ripple of fear. Children sensed the sudden tension and stopped their games, exchanging confused glances, while adults hesitated, unsure whether to intervene. The warmth of the summer day seemed to vanish in an instant, replaced by a heavy electric atmosphere. Adrian's eyes were dark and focused, his jaw tight, every movement calculated. He had been waiting for this moment, the culmination of weeks of obsession and secret scheming. To him, Mark was not just a husband standing in his way. He was an obstacle to be removed. His hands twitched subtly, almost imperceptibly, as he weighed his next move. Sarah watched from a few steps away, frozen, her heart pounding in her chest. Fear and disbelief battled with the dangerous attraction that had drawn her into Adrian's orbit weeks before. She knew, deep down, that what was about to happen could never be undone. Mark, still unprepared for the severity of the situation, attempted to reason with Adrian. His gestures were calm but defensive, trying to maintain authority in his own home. Yet he underestimated the obsession in Adrian's eyes, the kind of determination that ignores reason, empathy, and fear. The brief scuffle that followed was sudden and chaotic, shocking everyone in the garden. Plates toppled from tables, drinks spilled, and the children screamed as the two men confronted each other with physical intensity. Then, in a split second, Adrian drew a kitchen knife from the barbecue table. The movement was so quick that no one had time to react. Panic erupted. Guests screamed and scattered, some rushing toward the house, others frozen in shock. Mark stepped back, trying to protect himself, but the blade was faster than his reflexes. The first strike landed with devastating precision, a brutal blow that left no room for recovery. Blood spread across his shirt, stark and shocking against the summer light. Sarah could only watch in horror as the man she had been involved with attacked her husband in front of everyone. Her mind raced, unable to comprehend the reality of what was happening. Adrian struck again, relentless and precise, driven by obsession and rage. Guests shouted and tried to intervene, but the chaos made it impossible to stop the attack immediately. Within moments, the bright summer garden, once filled with joy, had transformed into a scene of terror and bloodshed. Mark fell to the ground, clutching his wounds, as Adrian stood over him, breathing heavily but controlled, almost eerily calm now that his act had been carried out. Sarah dropped to her knees beside her husband, her body shaking, her mind numb. The screams of guests and the cries of children filled the air, mixing with the hiss of the barbecue fire and the distant sound of sirens approaching. What had started as a cheerful family gathering had become a nightmare in an instant, leaving everyone traumatized and unable to process the sudden violence. In the garden's shocking aftermath, the sun continued to set, casting long shadows over the scene. The perfect summer day, bright and warm just moments ago, had been shattered by obsession, betrayal, and lethal violence. The events that unfolded would haunt the surviving family members forever, a tragic reminder that danger can hide behind the most ordinary of settings. The sound of sirens pierced the quiet suburban street, as police cars and an ambulance rushed toward the Johnson home. The bright summer evening had turned into chaos, the cheerful barbecue replaced by screaming guests and frightened children. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains, their eyes wide with disbelief, trying to understand what had shattered the peace of their street. Inside the garden, officers and paramedics moved quickly, weaving between panicked adults and crying children, trying to restore order while assessing the scene. Sarah knelt beside her husband, Mark, her hands shaking as she tried to stop the bleeding. Her mind was in turmoil, racing to process the horror that had unfolded. Her thoughts were fragmented, a whirlwind of fear, guilt, and disbelief. Adrian had been apprehended almost immediately, pinned down by 2 officers before he could flee. Yet, even in custody, he seemed unnervingly calm. His eyes still held the same intensity, the same dark determination that had driven him to attack Mark in the first place. It was as if he had already planned every step, and nothing about the chaos fazed him. Paramedics worked swiftly, attempting to stabilize Mark, but it was clear that his injuries were grave. The bright colors of the garden, the green grass, the cheerful decorations, the scattered plates of food, stood in stark contrast to the blood and fear that now dominated the scene. Guests were ushered to one side, their faces pale and trembling, as officers began questioning anyone who had witnessed the attack. Confusion and terror mingled with disbelief, and whispers spread quickly among the crowd about the nature of the crime. Sarah was taken aside by a detective, her eyes still wide with shock. She tried to explain the situation, revealing fragments of her affair with Adrian, but even she did not yet understand the full extent of what had driven him to violence. Her words stumbled over each other, incomplete and fragmented, as she struggled to make sense of the nightmare she had helped create. Officers noted every detail, carefully recording her testimony, knowing that her account would be critical in understanding the motive behind the attack. Adrian, handcuffed and silent, was led to a police car. He made no attempt to resist, his expression unreadable, almost detached. It became clear to investigators that this was not a random act of rage, but something far more calculated. Every movement, every glance, every step he had taken throughout the afternoon had been leading to this moment. The garden, once a symbol of warmth and family, had become the stage for a crime born from obsession and betrayal. As the night grew darker, the Johnson family struggled to comprehend the reality of the situation. Friends and neighbors offered quiet condolences, though the shock was too fresh for comfort. The police cordoned off the area, taking photographs and collecting evidence, while forensic teams examined the scene for clues. Every small detail, the position of the knife, the placement of the bodies, the bloodstains told a story of meticulous planning and cold intent. By the time Mark was transported to the hospital, the bright summer day was gone, replaced by a chilling darkness. The garden, now eerily quiet, bore the marks of violence and fear. Sarah sat on the porch steps, trembling, haunted by the memory of Adrian's eyes and the attack she had witnessed. It was clear that the events of that day would not only leave physical scars, but emotional ones, forever altering the lives of everyone involved. The illusion of safety had been destroyed, replaced by the stark reality of obsession, betrayal, and murder. In the days following the attack, investigators began piecing together the events that had led to the tragedy. The calm suburban neighborhood, still reeling from the shocking violence, became a hub of activity as detectives, forensic teams, and police cars filled the streets. The once bright garden of the Johnson home, where laughter and sunlight had mingled, was now examined in meticulous detail. Every scrap of evidence, from the knife used in the attack to the overturned plates and scattered decorations, told a story of premeditated violence. Detectives quickly discovered that Adrian Wells had not acted impulsively. His actions had been carefully planned, motivated by an obsessive fixation on Sarah. Surveillance footage from local shops and security cameras revealed weeks of Adrian watching her, following her routines, and monitoring her movements without her husband's knowledge. Emails and messages between Sarah and Adrian, recovered by investigators, confirmed the depth of their secret relationship. The affair had been going on for weeks, growing in intensity, and Adrian's obsession had escalated to the point of violence. Friends and family struggled to reconcile the friendly, polite man they had met at barbecues and gatherings with the calculated, dangerous individual revealed by the investigation. Adrian's calm demeanor during the attack, once perplexing, now made sense. Every glance, every subtle movement he had made during that fateful afternoon had been part of a plan, executed with precision. The attack was not a sudden outburst of anger, but the culmination of months of obsession, carefully hidden until the perfect moment to strike. Sarah's role, though indirect, was equally scrutinized. Investigators discovered that her interactions with Adrian had not been entirely innocent. Her secrecy had enabled Adrian's obsession, and while she did not physically take part in the attack, her actions and concealed relationship had created the conditions for the tragedy. The reality of the situation weighed heavily on her. She had lived with Mark for years, yet in a single afternoon, the consequences of hidden desires and dangerous liaisons had unraveled the life she knew. Forensic analysis of the garden revealed how calculated the attack had been. The knife had been selected from the kitchen in advance, hidden until the right moment. Adrian's movements, the way he positioned himself near Mark, and his timing were all deliberate. It was chilling to realize how ordinary the setting had appeared to everyone else, hiding the tension and planning that had built beneath the surface. The bright summer day had masked the deadly intentions lying in wait. Interviews with guests painted a picture of confusion and horror. No one had suspected the danger lurking behind Adrian's polite smile or Sarah's nervous glances. The children, traumatized by what they witnessed, could not understand why a day of games and laughter had turned into screams and bloodshed. The neighborhood, once familiar and safe, felt permanently altered, a stark reminder of how quickly normal life could be shattered by obsession and betrayal. By the end of the investigation, the truth was undeniable. Adrian Wells had meticulously orchestrated the attack, driven by an uncontrollable obsession with Sarah. The seemingly random act of violence was, in reality, a carefully executed crime. The Johnson family's tragedy was a testament to the destructive power of hidden desires, jealousy, and dangerous obsession, leaving a permanent scar on everyone involved. The trial of Adrian Wells began several months after the tragic barbecue. Courtrooms, usually reserved for routine matters, filled to capacity, buzzing with reporters, neighbors, and the families of those affected. The media coverage was intense, turning the case into a national story. Everyone wanted to understand how a seemingly ordinary summer day had turned into a nightmare. Sarah Johnson sat quietly in the courtroom, her face pale and drawn, replaying the events over and over in her mind. Every detail, the way Adrian had looked at her, the way Mark had fallen, the screams that echoed through the garden, was burned into her memory. The prosecution painted a chilling picture of premeditation. They presented evidence of Adrian's obsession, including his surveillance of Sarah, the carefully planned attack, and the messages that revealed the depth of his fixation. Witnesses described the chaos of that afternoon, the screams, the panic, and the sudden violence that had shattered their lives. Each testimony reinforced the horrifying reality. This had not been a momentary lapse of judgment, but a calculated act designed to eliminate Mark and seize Sarah's attention. The jury listened intently, the weight of the evidence pressing down like a dark cloud over the proceedings. Sarah's emotions were a storm of guilt and grief. She knew that her affair had played a role in the tragedy, though she had never imagined it could lead to murder. Her heart ached for Mark, whose life had been cut brutally short, and for the family who had lost a father, husband, and friend. She struggled to reconcile her actions with the consequences, understanding that her hidden desires had contributed to a chain of events that no one could reverse. The courtroom was a place of judgment, but also a space for reflection, where the consequences of secrecy, betrayal, and obsession became painfully clear. Adrian remained calm throughout the trial, his demeanor almost unnervingly composed. He did not express remorse, and his gaze often seemed distant, as though he were replaying the events in his own mind, detached from the human cost. The defense attempted to paint him as a man overwhelmed by emotion, but the mountain of evidence made it impossible to dispute the premeditated nature of the attack. Experts testified about obsessive behavior and how it can escalate to violence, painting a portrait of a man consumed by fixation, willing to destroy anything in his path to satisfy his desires. When the verdict was finally read, Adrian was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The courtroom was silent, the weight of justice heavy in the air. For Sarah and the Johnson family, it was a moment of closure, though the pain and loss remained. The once bright summer day that had promised laughter and family unity had been replaced by grief, guilt, and the lingering memory of violence. In the aftermath, the Johnson family struggled to rebuild their lives. Neighbors returned to their routines, but the shadow of the tragedy lingered over the street. Sarah moved away, attempting to find peace, haunted by the memory of her husband and the man whose obsession had destroyed everything. The garden where the barbecue had taken place remained empty for months, a silent reminder of the fragility of happiness and the devastating consequences of betrayal. The story of the Johnsons became a cautionary tale, a grim reminder that secrets, obsession, and hidden desires can explode in ways that no one can anticipate. A bright summer day had ended in tragedy, leaving scars that would never fully heal, and a lesson about the dark potential hidden behind the most ordinary of lives.